Boy, you do not get more patriotic than WrestleMania VII. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of my WrestleMania review series. We are looking at WrestleMania 7, and it's very funny that I'll actually be putting this up on February 14th, not because it's Valentine's Day, but it's also the same day that Captain America 4 Brave New World comes out. And given the patriotic aspect of it, it's very fitting that I would post this WrestleMania because this was heavily sold on America. And it's kind of ironic because the previous year they were in Canada. Now it's like the most uh, American USA red, white, and blue uh, WrestleMania of all time. They heavily sold it on that. But it's also, this WrestleMania is very well known because this was supposed to be in a bigger stadium in Los Angeles. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I should say, the storyline between Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan, with Sergeant Slaughter turning against America and becoming an Iraqi um, savior. This story got real personal real quick, and a lot of people were hating on it, and there was threats for a show like this, so they were afraid of a bombing, so they just moved it to a smaller venue. And this was, fortunately, good news. It was still in Los Angeles, which is very fitting. It would suck for Los Angeles to lose a WrestleMania for this, but we still got WrestleMania. I know for a fact that they never learned their lessons because they still did these like anti-America characters, but regardless, they managed to pull off this show. And to prove how patriotic they got, you had Jim Duggan ho as Uncle Sam, and you had Willie Nelson perform America the Beautiful. So that really shows you how heavy they pushed USA in your face for this show. We kick it off with the Rockers beating the Barbarian and Haku, basically a part of the Heenan family. At this point, the Heenan family was wearing down, so this is like a poetic way to finish them off. I like the Rockers winning this. It was good to see the Rockers get a WrestleMania victory for once, so can't fault it on that. Texas Tornado defeated Dino Bravo, and this match was okay. It was just a squash match. It was just to put over the Texas Tornado, and it's kind of awesome to see Kerry Von Erich have a good moment like this. For those of you who know, the Iron Claw just came out a couple years back, and it showed the story of the Von Erich family, a tragic story, and it showed that, you know, moving the tragedy out of the way, you could tell that Kerry Von Erich was the star of that family, and fortunately, drugs and injuries ruined that. But man, he was ready to really be the next warrior and the next top face of the community of the WWF. The British Bulldog defeated the Wardlow in a solid match. I was thoroughly entertained by this. Can't really fault it for it. Good job on making the British Bulldog look good. Wardlow, one of the best things you've ever done, put over the British Bulldog. Other than that, you merely didn't amount to nothing. I was thoroughly entertained by this uh, for what it was. The Nasty Boys beat the Hart Foundation for the WWF Tag Team Championships. This is the first real good match of the show. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Two amazing tag teams in the 90s and the 80s. Obviously, the Nasty Boys are more popular in WCW, but they did a good job here. And I can't really get mad because after this, Bret Hart moves on to do singles work for his career, and I can't really be mad about that. I was entertained. I was happy. So, yes, good job to the Nasty Boys. Good job to the Hart Foundation. And we move on because I'm excited for the next couple of WrestleManias where I get to talk about Bret Hart's singles run. The blindfold match. Jake the Snake Roberts and Rick Martel. This was comedy gold. If the crowd was not into it, then this match would have sucked. But the crowd was into it. Everybody was rooting for Roberts. Everybody was booing Rick Martel and not helping him find him. There was a part where Rick Martel has a chair and he doesn't even know where he's at. Obviously, they're not really blindfolded. There's holes. Some people can tell. In certain parts of the match, you actually can tell that they have a hole in the mask and the blindfold. But my favorite part of this was when Jake Roberts finally catches Rick Martel, hits him with the DDT, and he's trying to look for him, pins him 1, 2, 3. And the reason why I like this is because it showed you that they knew how to sell finishers back then. Nowadays, everybody just kicks out of everything. That is why Jake the Snake Roberts is the best at hitting that DDT. And he said it in the Chris Van Vliet interview, which you could check out. Undertaker squashing Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Now, a lot of people say that Andre the Giant should have been in this position. I don't think so. Undertaker needed a quick squash match with a smaller guy who was well known. I think people see the dream match aspect, and sometimes we fantasy book to a point where it's not realistic, because if it was Andre and Taker, there's no way Andre was going to lose. Especially with a bad back, they would want Andre to beat the Undertaker, who was this threatening villain, and Andre the Giant was the more established babyface. So we were better off having the Undertaker fight another well-known star. Jimmy Snuka was the correct guy because he was well established, he was well known, and the Undertaker needed a big victory for his first WrestleMania. Now, granted, we didn't know that the streak was on the way, but this was the birth of the streak. But then we get to the greatest match of the entire night. Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage. The story was Warrior was fighting everyone and everything in his way during his championship run, except Randy Savage. Queen Sherry kept asking for it. Ultimate Warrior refused. Eventually, he fought Sergeant Slaughter at the Rumble. Savage cost him the belt. Warrior cost Savage the Royal Rumble spot. And then we move on to here where they collide and they realize that one of them had to retire, the loser of the match. And man, these guys knew how to sell. These guys were just selling like crazy. These guys were hitting their moves. It was a great 20-minute match. And, Warrior was not well known for his wrestling. He was just well known for his pops, his moments. But Randy Savage carried him to an amazing match. And this was an amazing, amazing heartfelt match, especially when we get to the end. But eventually, Savage loses. He is crying on the floor of defeat. Warrior has a stand-up moment. He is just cheering on. And then Queen Sherry, being the cocky heel manager that she is, she just kicks Savage down while he is just sad. And then Ms. Elizabeth, watching from the crowd, she just gets up, she runs to and then she punches Queen Sherry, she pushes her out to the side. The reunion of Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage is a beautiful moment. And them standing tall, I loved it to death. This was amazing, a 5-star classic if you ask me. And then we move on to possibly the worst match of the show. It was Ichiro Tenryuya and Koji Kitao beating Demolition. This was just embarrassing. These guys went over. Demolition should have won. Then we could have built up Demolition versus the Nasty Boys in the summer. I didn't like this. Moving on. Big Boss Man with Andre the Giant in his corner beating Mr. Perfect by DQ. This is one of the first few DQ finishes that I enjoy because I don't think Big Boss Man was good enough to be the Intercontinental Champion. I'm being honest. I would have loved to see British Bulldog versus Mr. Perfect instead, and then have Andre on the corner. Damn, I'm getting mad. I kind of wish that we did get that. But this was still good regardless. Mr. Perfect carried Big Boss Man to a good match, so I can't really fault it. And I like the real selling point was Andre the Giant pushing Bobby Heenan, and then like Haku and the Barbarian come out and Andre knocks them down. Even though Big Boss Man loses by DQ, he has the upper hand standing tall. Like I said, I kind of do wish we got Bulldog and Perfect, but it does work in the long run because months later at SummerSlam, I believe it's when Mr. Perfect drops the belt to Bret the Hitman Hart in that awesome classic match that you should go watch right now. Have you watched it yet? You're welcome. Earthquake defeated Greg the Hammer Valentine. I was falling asleep. I'm not a big fan of Earthquake. Greg Valentine, not that big of a fan either, especially um, his comments recently. So yeah, this was whatever for me. Legion of Doom. Ooh, what a rush! Defeated the Powers of Glory, Hercules, and Roma. Uh, Thankfully, this was less than a minute. So, good job for Legion of Doom winning. So, another good time for tag teams, except for Demolition. They got screwed bad. Virgil defeated Ted DiBiase by countout. I believe in the summer is when they fought for the $1 million championship and Virgil wins standing tall. Roddy Piper was on Ted DiBiase's corner, and then Queen Sherry, I believe, comes in this match and interferes. But Virgil stands tall at the end. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the countout victory. Obviously, it leads to SummerSlam and their match there. It's weird. It's like they pushed all of the WrestleMania matches and then they moved them to SummerSlam. It's weird that they do that sometimes. But you get what you get. Um, Solid match. These guys do have good in ring chemistry, so I can't really fault it for that part. The Mountie, who was a nobody, just a guy who held the Intercontinental Championship once for like a day, beating Tito Santana. I don't know what they saw in this guy. He looked stupid. He looked ridiculous, and I just was not a big fan of him. Moving on. The main event. Sergeant Slaughter versus Hulk Hogan. And normally Hulk Hogan comes out with his yellow um, top, but this time he came with the American flag, or at least the colors of the American flag. Um, this was a good match. I really enjoyed it. Sergeant Slaughter was a very underrated wrestler. Watching this match, I'm like, yeah, he was a pretty solid wrestler. And then Hulk Hogan got the victory. Good for Hulk Hogan. Very clear that people were getting tired of it, Hulk Hogan up to this point, but he was selling money, but he was selling tickets, I should say. But it was what it was. So, um, not the greatest show. I'm gonna be honest, not the greatest show, but a solid show nonetheless. I can't really get more mad about it. It was a really fun show, not a great show. This is definitely one of the better WrestleManias I watched in a while. As far as the review series, not as good as 3. 3 was still the best one I've watched so far. But this one was a solid close second. Maybe I'm being biased because it's in LA. But yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Good wrestling matches, fun moments, entertaining moments, and then that Warrior Savage match, which honestly it should have been the main event. I would have done Warrior holding the belt, and then have Savage be like, "I'll put my career if you put the belt online," something like that. Um, and then that could have been a good heartfelt moment, but again, they needed Hogan on top. So because they constantly focus on putting Hogan on top, and at this point, I'm tired of him. The crowd probably got tired of him. Then, um, if they have done that, then maybe this wouldn't have been moved to a smaller stadium. They probably would have kept it in a big stadium, and then avoid that political storyline that to happen. But regardless, this was an entertaining show. I can't get mad. I was happy with the wrestling. I was happy with the moments that they gave us, and that foreshadowed a pretty solid year. Maybe not in the main event scene, but the I believe 91 was a pretty solid year. You had Bret Hart rise to the top. The tag team division was great. There was a lot of good moments. Big Boss Man, even though I'm not a big fan of his wrestling, he was a very entertaining character. I'm gonna give this a B plus. It's not quite an A yet, but pretty good for what it did. Building up new stars like Bulldog and the Texas Tornado and the Rockers. So Virgil even. So they did a good job building the new guys up. Granted, Hogan was still on top, but not for long. Two more years and we're done with this. But again, B plus show. Enjoyed it for what it was. So Kudos for that. And then we move on to WrestleMania 8 very soon. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you on the next one.